Hey everybody, this is Dave with OC Astronomy again. I took the opportunity to kind of rebuild my scope layout, and here's what I decided to do. I got this, which is a Pegasus power box, and the Pegasus power box has all of my cables going to it from the focuser and the camera down here and the guide camera that's there, and then I also am putting in this guide camera. And the reason is I was having a little bit of trouble finding a guide star because I have this this guider camera here that's located on the off-axis guider, and it has a very small mirror that uses a pickup. It's like a little pickup prism that sends part of the light from the main camera to the side camera, and it's right on the edge, and it just picks up a little bit of the light cone. And I was having a lot of trouble finding guide stars with it, and so my idea is I got this this really nice QHY. It is a QHY 5L mono camera. Specifically, I got it for guiding, and the reason is the pixel size is about 3.5, and that small pixel size, if you match it up with a small guide scope, will give you a focal length combination. If you have a small 50 millimeter guide scope, they're usually about 162 on the focal length, but if you add a Barlow lens, then you are up around 320, and that 320 focal length paired with the pixel size of about 3.5, 3.75, together with the really increased sensitivity of the guide scope, will hopefully be able to guide this longer f7 Celestron telescope. And so I'm going to try that out and try running it all from the Pegasus power box. The power box is great because it lets you run all your cables to one spot. It's kind of, I mounted it here actually on my the bolts that hold the dovetail plate in, because it's just a handy spot for it. And then I ran some of the cables underneath the scope to come down here to the to where they plug into the mount. And I think that it'll simplify my cabling. It'll clean up and make everything a whole lot neater. And the other thing is the power box has power, obviously, that's 12 volt power, and so you can control that from your computer, and you can turn on and off anything that runs off that 12 volts over the computer interface. So that lets you remote desktop into your PC, and then you can control everything that you have. So anyway, I wanted to redo my setup and try to guide and see what kind of guider performance I'm getting. I'm going to try using this new guide camera. I'm also going to try using my old guide camera with the off-axis guider and compare the two to how my guiding used to be before I replaced the bearings and before I did that work. So here is the QHY camera, and I have got it focused now. And so this is with what I did was I took the Barlow lens off of a normal 2x Barlow, and I screwed it onto the end using the QHY nose piece that they supply. The nose piece, I think, has a C-sized fitting threads on the end of it to screw into the camera, and then a standard 1.25 inch nose piece. And then I screwed the Barlow onto the end of that, and so it won't be quite 2x. It'll probably be 1.5 to 1.7. So whenever I do, when I'm able to get a plate solve, I'll be able to tell exactly what my field of view is and what my focal length is with this combination and setup. You'll notice that it's also, I installed it on the bottom of my telescope. There's actually a YouTuber guy out there, James Lamb. I'll give a shout out to him. He was talking about how putting your weight closer to the center of the axis is better. He was talking specifically about counterweights, and so if you think about it, having the weight closer to the center of the axis really can reduce the vibration, as opposed to hanging weight way up top. I left that finder bracket there just so in case I need to have a manual finder I can, but I'm hoping to do everything with this as my digital finder and then also hopefully as my guide scope. It's mounted to the underside, and then I've reduced the weight as much as I can over here, and the only thing I have is the cabling. And then on the counterweights, I put a couple of counterweights up close to this, and I've made sure they won't whack on any part of the mount. And then it has one more counterweight I had to add to make it work, but this shifts the weight closer to the axis, and everything is still underneath my load limit for my mount by quite a lot. So I'm hoping that by moving everything closer to the center of the radius, that you'll have less torque arm, and then you'll have less vibration. So I think if I understood James Lamb correctly, I think that's a thing that will help you out. And he sounded like a pretty smart dude, and his video sounded pretty smart, so I'm going to trust him on that. And so I'm trying to move everything towards the center. Also, where it's located now, it's not going to hit anything. There's nothing on the axis. You can spin it around and around and it won't bump the bottom. Another thing that I did was I put a small webcam here and just ran the cable because I had some extra USB ports on my power box. I put that, it's a wide angle webcam, and the reason that I did was because I have this opening here. I want to make sure that my telescope is lined up where you can see out the opening. And so I put a webcam on there, and it's wide angle, so if there's just a little bit of light in the dome, then it'll see the white of the walls. And as long as I'm centered, I know that wherever my scope is pointing, that it'll be able to see the sky clearly up the middle, because that's been a problem that I've had with the dome slaving. And so I just put it right here on the end of my dovetail and then ran the cords through. And I found the guider scope and rings, these are Losmandy style, to fit the bracket for the Celestron scope. I found some Losmandy clamps and rings on Astromart. I highly recommend going to Astromart. They've got some really good bargains on used gear, and everybody's really, really helpful. So anyway, that's my new guider setup, and I hope that it works. If it does, then I'll be able to use that smaller scope to guide this one, but I'll get a lot more stars in it, and I'll be able to guide at faster exposures, because that the off-axis guider back there, it shares the same focal length, and so you get really precise guiding, but that's if you can find a guide star in under 4 or 5 second exposure. So anyway, that's my new setup. I hope that it works out good. I'll let you know.